All right, welcome back to the second part of One Man's Faith. We're looking at 1 Samuel. We're going to look at probably, well, hopefully the first 19 chapters. Well, I don't know whether we're going to get that far or not. But it opens with the story of Hannah being barren and wanting a child. And it also mentions Eli and his two sons. And so then we have the story of Hannah praying for a son. She has, or praying for a child. She has a son. She names him Samuel. And she took him to the priest and handed him over to Eli to raise up to be a minister to the Lord. And it says in verse 11 of chapter 2, then Elkanah went to his home in Ramah, but the boy ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. And interestingly, the next verse says, and the sons of Eli were worthless men. They did not know the Lord. Ooh, how you be a priest and not know the Lord? They didn't follow the Lord. They didn't revere the Lord. They didn't fear him. They did not know the Lord and the custom of the priest with the people. And when any man was offering a sacrifice, the priest's servants would come while the meat was boiling with a three-pronged fork in his hand, and he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. All that the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. So they were doing wrong. Okay? And Samuel was growing up ministering to the Lord. Now, he went to sleep one night. Well, let me back up first. A prophet, comes to Eli and says, listen, you haven't done right. You have not raised up these kids in the admonition of the Lord. Therefore, I'm going to judge you. And you will be forced down from being the judge and priest. And Eli doesn't do anything. So Samuel is sleeping one evening, and he hears his voice, and he immediately gets up and he goes to Eli and says, "Did you call me?" And Eli said, "No, I didn't call you." And so 2 more times this happens, and the third time Eli says, "Listen, it's probably the Lord. When you hear it again, you answer the Lord and say, 'Yes, Lord, your servant is here.'" And so it did happen. Samuel heard the voice of the Lord call his name. And so he cries out, and Samuel says in verse 10 of chapter 3, "Speak, for your servant is listening." And so, Samuel probably didn't know what to expect. But what he didn't expect was for God to say, okay, you're going to become the prophet, and Eli is stepping down. He says it this way: "Behold, I'm about to do a thing in Israel in which both ears of everyone will tingle. In that day I will carry out against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I'm about to judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knew, because his sons brought a curse on themselves, and he did not rebuke them." That's a heavy word to give to a little boy. But Eli had already been spoken this word, and Eli didn't do it. Listen, it's important for us to hear that when God speaks a word to us, that we need to respond to it. When God speaks a word, this was a word of rebuke. What Eli probably should have done was fallen on his face, fasted if he really wanted to, and just cried out and repented, and probably pulled his kids off of priestly duty. But he didn't. And based on what is here, it doesn't say he did anything. And so the Lord comes and he tells Samuel, this is what's going to happen. And he goes on and he says in verse 14, and therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever. And so Samuel goes to sleep. Eli asks him, hey, did you hear that voice again? And Samuel said, yes, I did. And then Eli says, well, tell me what God said. Oh, can you imagine? How would you have liked to have been this little dude, probably not even a teenager yet. And he's learning to minister to the Lord. And the Lord speaks to him and says, I'm doing away with Eli. Eli really now has become his father. And then Eli says, well, what did God say? I don't know if I would have wanted to have been Samuel at that time. That, to me, would have been a hard decision. But Samuel did what he should have done. Because Eli asked him a question, he can't lie to him, or he shouldn't lie to him. And so he didn't. And he told Eli exactly what was going to happen. And so from that point, well, it says in verse 19, and Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fail. And all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, because the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh by the word of the Lord. So Samuel takes on the role of prophet. Eli's the last judge. Eli was a priest. He also prophesied. But now Samuel is being put in that position. He is called a prophet here, but he also judges. This is the way God worked. He worked through a person to bring righteousness into the nation, and to bring, it's not, in some cases it was like he sat as a judge if you go into a courtroom. The other was he sat as a mediator between God and the people. And so Samuel starts to grow, and the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, is in Shiloh. Now, the Philistines come against the Israelites, and the people of Israel decide to take the Ark into battle with them, thinking that by the Ark being there, that it would be a piece of cake. See, they didn't ask. They didn't go before the Lord. And we'll see this, and it's an important point too for us, that we need to understand that when we do something or get ready to do something, we need to go before the Lord and ask him. Even today, see, he's still Lord. And as such, and as Americans and Westerners, we don't like this. We don't want anybody to tell us what to do. It's an enigma in Pahrump. We are really lawless in Pahrump. We don't want people to tell us what to do. We don't want Pahrump to become a city or a town, because then we'd have people telling us what to do. We didn't like it back in, what was it, about 1999, when the county decided to set up an inspection system for housing. Oh, man. We almost had a revolt. And even after they set it up, there were some contractors that wouldn't allow the inspectors on the properties to inspect. It took a while for this thing to really set in. We're that way. Pahrump was based in lawlessness. Back when Pahrump started, when there were just some farms and all around here, people, outlaws especially, to escape Las Vegas police, would come over the hill to Pahrump and hide, because the Las Vegas police knew better than to come over the hill after them. So the whole concept of Pahrump, outside of the fact that it's, I mean, it has a destiny, because Pahrump means water in the rock, but yet the adversary is trying to do his best to make lawlessness rule rather than allowing the Spirit of God to rule. And it's something we as the church and Christians in Pahrump need to come against and pray against, break the bond that's over Pahrump with this lawlessness, to allow God's Spirit and to allow God to rule, to be Lord. He doesn't want to be Lord just to lord it over us. He wants to be Lord to give us the best. Again, let me just read. I'm going to flip to it so I can read it to you. Jeremiah 29. If you don't know this verse, take it and write it out. Take and write this verse out. Put it on your mirror or whatever. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope. And it says, then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. Then, when we understand that, and you say, Neal, that's the Old Testament, that doesn't matter anymore. Okay, all right, well, just because you said that, let's go over to John. I think it's John chapter 10. And verse 10. Go ahead and find it. I've got to take a break. And when I come back, I shouldn't laugh. Sorry. We're going to take a break, and when I come back, we'll look at John 10:10. I'll be right back.